send me an email with it, and I'll put you on the guest list.
Oh, awesome, man. Oh, that rocks.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much. That totally rocks.
You.
Thank you.
I want to see you.
Yes, sir. I'll be there.
Hang out.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I will be there, my friend. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Pharmacy Rockstar Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Steve Rodriguez, pharmacist, certified merger and acquisition advisor, and huge fan of rock and roll. Thank you all for being here today. So today, folks, I have a very special guest. My next guest is an actual real rock star. He came to America from Cuba when he was 11 years old. He has rocked with some of the biggest names in heavy metal, including Quiet Riot, Ozzy Osbourne, and Whitesnake. He rejoined with Quiet Riot in 2021 and is the longest serving member currently in the band. Ladies and gentlemen, this guy was one of my idols as a kid growing up. He's one of the most iconic rock musicians to ever play the bass. I am proud to introduce on the Pharmacy Rockstar Podcast, Mr. Rudy Sarzo. Rudy, man, thank you so much for joining me on the Pharmacy Rockstar Podcast. Growing up, you were you still are. You're a rock icon. I mean, you were an idol to so many people. And, it's because of people like you that, quite frankly, man, it's guys like you that my mom might not like it because she hated me, hated the fact that I liked rock and roll growing up. But it was guys like you. And one of the things I didn't realize, I realized later on, but you were the typical classic icon rocker. And whenever I say that in the sense that I remember I used to watch that Whitesnake video. And it was back in, what was this, 87, 88, something like that. And I mean, Whitesnake was on top of the world. And I'd see this guy licking his guitar. And I thought, wow, I mean, that is like iconic rock star. Like, man, it doesn't get any bigger than that. And then when I got to jam out with you in Vegas one year at the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, I was like, wow, I mean, I just got to rock out with the Rudy Sarzo, man. So thank you so much for joining on my show. I mean, I'm so excited to have you, and thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. One of those things that once in a while pops up is me having to lick the bass during my Whitesnake years. And do you want to hear the story, how the whole thing came about?
Yes, okay. Please.
This is what happened. This is for the Here I Go Again video, which is the second video I did with Whitesnake. The first one was Still the Night. So now we're a band because for the Still the Night, we just got a phone call from the record company inviting us to participate in the video. We were not officially in the band. We had not sat down and worked things out with management yet. So after that video, the Still the Night video, everybody decided, yeah, this is awesome. We got to do this. So then I become a member of the group officially. So now they're working on the second video. Here I go again, and working with the director, Marty Calder. The way he did things with us was that he would do all the long shots first, the positioning the camera in certain angles to capture the whole band. And then he would do close-ups later on. So by the time that my close-up came up, it was like 2:00 in the morning. And I was really tired. And I knew that I had to get up early the next day to shoot the third video, Is This Love? They were done back to back one day, and then the next video the following day. And I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get some sleep for this. So here comes time for me to shoot my close-ups. And I'm alone. The camera is on me, and the director. So I do one pass, and he yells cut, and then he asks me, "Is this the best you can do?" And I go, "Oh God, okay, I gotta raise my level here of energy." So I tell him, you know what, please give me one more pass. And we do that. And I figure, you know what, I don't have a third pass on me. I did every single unimaginable thing that I could do with a bass on that pass, you know, all the stuff, right? And so he gets, okay, we got it. Okay, good, great. I get to go home. Now, a few weeks later, it came time to watch the edit. And I'm watching it along with everybody else in the band. And here comes the part that I lick the bass. And then after that, it cuts over to David licking Tawny's leg. And I go, okay, that makes sense. And I am glad that that's the only thing that showed up that I did, because I did so many more horrible things during that pass that never made it to the video. So that's what happened.
That's
Yeah,
awesome, man. That totally rocks, man. That totally
yeah,
rocks.
yeah, yeah.
You know, I was that summer. I was in West Texas with my aunt and uncle. I was staying there for the summer because I wasn't old, I wasn't 16 yet, and so I needed to work to make money for school's clothes and things like that. And so I worked in the cantaloupe fields in West Texas, in Pecos, Texas. And at that time, I was staying with my aunt and uncle, and me and my cousin would watch MTV. And my cousin, he was a musician, and he was just natural born musician. He played everything. I mean, he played the drums, played the bass, keyboards. I mean, he sang as a child, everything. And so, we have a lot of musical influence in my family. But that video, we would watch that video and we would record it on the VHS tapes and we would watch it over and over. And then one night, my cousin Eddie, he goes and gets his dad's bass and he gets on top of the couch and he starts licking his bass just like you would. We're like, oh man, that's so awesome. And we just thought that was the coolest thing. And I told him earlier this week, I said, hey, Eddie, remember whenever we were kids, how you used to get your dad's bass and you used to lick it like that guy on TV? He's like, yeah. I said, hey, that guy's going to be on my podcast. And he's like, whoa, man, that is so awesome. That's so cool. So, man, I mean, when I think of you and I think of, Whitesnake and heavy metal, and then whenever I got to jam with you in Vegas that one summer, I don't know if you remember, but Appice was there. You were my counselor. Appice was my drum counselor. And man, that was just so much fun and so exciting. And just to have you on my show, it's like, wow. I mean, I'm like a kid in a candy store, man. So I can't thank you enough. But one thing, Rudy, that really stood out to me, I didn't realize this until I met you, is that you're, depending on where you're from, here in Texas, we say Hispanic. In California, or New York, they might say you're Latino, but you're from Cuba. You're from Cuba. And then whenever you asked me what my name was and I said, Rodriguez, you're like, oh, Rodriguez. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy speaks Spanish. And then that's when you told me you're from Cuba. I'm like, wow. And so I always thought, when I read your bio, so you came to the States when you were 11 years old. How does an 11-year-old Cuban kid become one of heavy metal's most iconic bass players? I mean, how did you get into rock? Like, what kind of music do you like? Like, what was your inspiration? What was your influence? How did you become that guy?
That's a multi-layered question. And how did I become that guy? It's sometimes you have to take a look at yourself. It's like, how did you become a doctor? There's certain layers to how you became that. First of all, you have to be inspired. You have to have the passion, not to give it up, not to give up on the consciousness that you're accumulating. Because in order to become who we are, there is, when we're kids, everything is open, everything is possible. You have to make choices. One time I wanted to be a pilot. One time I wanted to be a double O spy, like James Bond. You know, all of this stuff, because that was cool. That was like the cool thing to do while I was growing up, you know. And sometimes the media presents that to you. Hey, you could be this, you could be that. It's done in advertising, you know, back in the day we had cigarette smoking advertising, and it's always like the cool people smoke. Hey, you want to be this cool guy, you got to smoke. So a lot of the time it's environmental. Sometimes it's cultural, social. And then it's also status, financial status. It's like, let's say I wanted to be a lawyer. That takes a lot of money to go to law school. And say, okay, I can't afford that. My family cannot afford to put me through law school. Okay, so that's out. So you start looking at your options, and then you start looking at what do I love to do. I I I love to play music. I mean, my ambition was never to be well known or like you say, iconic. I mean, it's all perception. That's your perception of me. My perception of myself is I'm a work in progress. I really haven't done what I aspire to do. Uh, because what I aspire to do is to be the best that I can be, and I'm not the best that I can be yet. I might never get there, but I'm sure I'm going to enjoy the journey trying to get there. So, how did I want that being a musician? Uh, by the end of my high school year, I was already making more money than my dad was making working at a factory by playing clubs, you know, like clubs, not just playing team dances, but just playing clubs. And I said, you know what? I can make a living out of doing this. And I enjoy the lifestyle uh, because I never really became a victim of the environment. I had my parents instill in me uh, a solid, positive Christian lifestyle. And I think every religion has their own positivity, but mine happened to be Christian. And so I had a moral compass. Of course, I was surrounded by all of this other stuff, but you learn to make choices, and sometimes the choices are made according to how much you want to fit into what you're doing. Like in the 80s, if you did not partake in certain substances, you were not trusted within a circle of people. And you have to make a choice of like, okay, uh, am I valuable to the situation, the band that I'm in? If I feel that the band feels that I am valuable, they're gonna give me a pass. Okay, you don't have to partake with us. We want you to play with us. Okay, that's the ultimate situation to be in. In others, is you have to prove yourself. You have to prove your value within the situation, and then you have to like you know hang out with them. And then it comes to the point that you prove yourself, and you do not need to keep proving, to actually partake with them, because again, you prove your value. But it doesn't mean that every time you join a band, especially at the very beginning, I had to really prove my value in order to for them to realize that it was a choice that I didn't want to partake at the level that people were partaking. So there's a lot of variables to the journey. There's a lot of challenges and a lot of detours and getting back on track again. But all in all, I had made the decision that I was going to be a professional musician once I moved to Los Angeles. And I made three trips: 76, 77, and 78. 76, 77, I run out of money, so I have to go back out again and play clubs and gather more money to come back. By 78, I had joined the Quiet Riot Randy Rhoads version of the band, and I've been here ever since, steadily. And and again, it's the people that you play with that sometimes lead by example. And I was very blessed to have played with Randy Rhoads, because he was the most complete musician I've ever played with. He had a moral compass, musical integrity, dedicated, a passion, uh, knowledge of not only his instrument but music in general. Because I played with a lot of guys who could had a lot of knowledge about the instrument, but did not have a formal musical education. And that's what Randy did. He was born into a musical family, professors, music professors, his mom and dad. They built a music school, Musonia, still stands. and it still operates in North Hollywood. And Randy started playing music at 4 or 5 years old, and he was taught by the teachers at the school, and then he became a teacher by the time that I was playing with him in 1978 in Quiet Riot. So once I joined the teaching staff of Musonia, then I got to see a whole different side of Randy that I did not see when we were either gigging or we were rehearsing, because it was very focused. So this is the first time that I actually see, well, I listen, I hear, I watch Randy pick up an acoustic guitar in between lessons, and he's playing, he's practicing. And I go, I didn't know you could play classical. And he says, yeah, that's my first. He said, I didn't start playing electric until later on because I wanted to hang out with kids. I wanted to hang out with kids my own age, and just go to parties and play music and have fun. But that was his first love, the classical guitar. And he was so dedicated. By the time that we were playing together in Aussie, and he got his award for the best new guitar talent in Guitar Play magazine poll, he won that award. He realized that people were paying attention to what he was doing, and people were listening, and it became his responsibility to become the best Randy Rhoads that he could be. And with that, I mean, I learned so much from him: musical integrity, focus, dedication, all of the above. And that's what gets me. That's my backbone. What I learned from Randy. Also, uh, I have a book. It's called Off the Rails, and I wrote about this in the book because this is the pivotal moment in my career. Was that after struggling in Los Angeles, trying to make it, for so long, by 19 late 81, I was sleeping in Kevin DuBro's apartment on his floor. I was playing in his band Dubrow, and I have been reading the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, getting my spiritual center, solidifying it, and I had an epiphany. I made a one-sided agreement with God. When I say one-sided, it's because it's from me, and I said, okay, as long as my fingers keep moving, I'm going to keep playing. But if I never make it as a musician, my relationship with you, God, is more important than anything else. So I was at peace. I was at peace, and that's my bar for spirituality, to actually be at peace as much as I had at that moment. My faith, the strongest ever, while I was still sleeping on the floor with no promise of anything in front of me. Uh, and that's, anytime that I feel that my faith has gone below that mark, I work very hard at getting it back, because to me that is my fuel. That's what propels me forward.
Wow, that's amazing, Rudy. That's amazing. So yeah, I didn't realize. So you're a man of faith. So you're a man of faith, and just from listening to you, it sounds like you're a man. I totally appreciate this because um, you're a man that also seeks inspiration, and that's what I do, and that's what people like you do for me. Whenever I've seen you, like whenever I met you and I got to jam with you, and I've watched videos of you. Like for those of you that have never seen Rudy play, Rudy is one of the most amazing bass players I have ever seen. From going back to the videos with Whitesnake and Quiet Riot, you're talking about proving yourself. I'm just kind of listening to you. I'm like, how are you having to prove yourself? You're the guy that gets his bass, slings it around your back. You get it. To this day, you will get your bass, play it behind your head. I mean, you do those. I'm like, holy cow, like you got to be freaking awesome, amazing, know your instrument like the back of your hand in order to be able to do those things. So that's why when you're telling me that you had to prove yourself, all like, you've been doing that stuff since way back then, way back, back in the 80s. I mean, you were already doing that stuff. So that's why I was understanding whenever you were saying that you had to prove yourself, because I thought, look, there's not everyone can do what you can do. I mean, you work magic whenever you play that bass guitar.
I appreciate your wonderful words, but from my perception of myself is it's two things. I can actually go back to my original source of inspiration, which who I am today is because I got to play with Randy Rhoads, both in Choir Riot and Ozzy, because I saw different levels of Randy. But also is the way I look at life is, I get up in the morning and every day is an audition for me. I audition at everything, not just not just for music that uh, but also for the way that I live my life. I have to prove myself to myself and then to others and to my higher power, to God, that I am on the right path. Uh, this is something. See, I believe that it's always now. So I connect myself to where it all started for me when I started getting that direction and that mentoring of how things must be done in order to reach a higher level of excellence, which I'm still trying to reach. It's a work in progress. But for people like Randy Rhoads and who mentored me in that, and it was all done by example. It wasn't like he ever sat me down and said, "Well, this is what you got to do." It's something that I noticed, and basically, I start admiring his musicianship, his integrity, his passion, and you start saying, well, asking yourself, how is he accomplishing this? What's at the core of Randy? And with Randy, it was all about music. That was it. Uh, my God, we never talked about politics, religion, who was going out with who. None of that really mattered. All that mattered was the music. So that's what made him so pure as a musician, and so passionate. If you look at any photos of Randy with Choir Riot playing clubs, and you look at the photo of Randy that were taken basically a year and a half later when he hit the stage with Ozzy Osbourne, it's the same guy, and he always taught the audience. Just the clarity, his body language, he's like showing clearly what he's playing. So that's one of the things that through the years I come to realize that each individual, we have our responsibility is to teach the world. And very early on, when I came to the United States, being Cuban was kind of like who are you guys? Why are you guys here? Especially when my family was relocated from Miami. We got to Miami in 1961, and then by 63 we were relocated up north to New Jersey. And we went into a neighborhood that there were not enough Cubans. Now there is. There's a bunch of Cubans in West New York, New Jersey. But back then, it wasn't. So, I was a minority, basically an outcast because I really didn't have any command of the language. And I was surrounded by generations of cultures who have been there, for decades. And at a very early age, I understood that I was just like them. And all I needed to do is to teach them what a Cuban is, or me as a Cuban, who I am, and I believe that that is the key for all of us to understand each other. But it's got to come from the individual who's being, maybe there's some racism towards them. See, to me, racism is just the fear of you to know who this person or their culture is all about. You
Correct.
know,
Correct.
yeah, once you get to know, I say, okay, we like the same things. We're the
Yeah.
same. You know, we're human beings. Come on, you know,
Right.
you're going to judge somebody for their pigmentation?
It's the
It's
word I
ridiculous.
use. Yeah, yeah. The word I use that you're describing, it's ignorance. I think
Ignorance.
ultimately
Exactly.
it's ignorance. And
Exactly.
ignorance, definition of
Yeah.
ignorance is lack of
Yeah.
knowledge, lack of understanding.
Yeah.
That's what that
Yeah.
is, and that's where that comes
Yeah.
from.
Ignorance breeds racism. That's all, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. You're right.
So,
You know, you,
you know, so, you know, again, you know, teaching is so important, passing on information, which is what
mhm.
podcasts to me are all about. That's why I love doing them, is because, you know, people want to know how I achieved something. And I go, okay, I'm going to share it with you. Just
Wow. But
basically,
one thing,
don't,
yeah, I'm sorry to mean to cut you off,
no, no,
but I just wanted to comment on one thing that you said that, man, I just thought totally rocked, and this is what I believe as well. I mean, whenever you said that every day is an audition, that totally rocks because that is so true. Not just in music, not just in business, not just in relationships, but just in life in general. You got to prove yourself every single day. What you did yesterday or the day before, that doesn't count today. And so many people like to live, in the past. They like to live on the victories of yesterday. And someone like you, I mean, I totally appreciate you saying that because you're one of the heaviest, hardest rockers that has ever walked the planet. And you're now in your early 70s, okay? And I see you on videos, okay? I see you now. I see how young you look, how good you look, how vibrant you are on stage. In fact, I'm going to go see you in a couple of weeks. You're going to be here in my backyard, so I'm going to go see you in the Colony. Yeah, you guys are going to be at Lava Cantina, so I'm going to be there. So look for me, man. I'm going to be there cheering for you. But that I was gonna one of the questions I was gonna ask you is I've got it written down right here. What do you do to look and stay so healthy? Well, I mean, just listening to you, I mean, I can already pick up on that. I mean, you're a man of faith. You're a man that seeks inspiration. You're a man that, I mean, you've been playing the bass longer than most people, most other bass players, are alive. And you're still saying, hey, I haven't reached my potential yet. I'm still not as good as I can be. And I'm like, wow, that's why this guy looks the way he does. That's why this guy plays the way he does. That's the way that, because you've got that mindset. That's one of the questions I always ask all of my guests is, hey, how important is mindset? I don't have to ask you that question because I can already just see it. You just have this mindset of you're constantly trying to reach your potential. And that is just so many people don't understand that. I mean, you got to constantly try to push to make yourself better. Self-improvement, I mean, that's so important. I believe, and I think you're of the same mindset in that regard.
absolutely. You know, and this is when we're younger, and I know this from playing with other musicians who did the same thing. There is and I'm talking just for musicians. I know this really expands to other things in life. Uh, there's a pursuit of greatness. There's a pursuit of greatness, and it's because when we were kids, uh, the bands that inspired me, the artists, they were great, total greatness. From the Beatles to Led Zeppelin to the Who to Jimi Hendrix, Keith Emerson with Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I mean, every bass, just every band had a great rhythm section, and it was greatness. It seemed like if you were not great, you were not going to get a record deal. So you had that pursuit of greatness. And in order to achieve that greatness, of course, we had some bad examples, like you would read about, certain bands having some drug or alcohol intake, and you start thinking, well, maybe I should dabble in this because maybe that will open up some doors of, perception that I'm not getting because I'm not drinking or doing other stuff. And then you realize, no, that's not it. I can't. First of all, no, this is going to kill me. No, this is going to kill my career. Okay. But, you're trying to get information by experience or the information that magazines used to glorify, the rock
Mm-hmm.
star lifestyle. You know, Uh,
Sex, drugs, and
my
rock and
life,
roll.
yeah, exactly. Well, sex with my wife, no drugs. Oh, supplements and vitamins. That's what I take. Yes. And rock and roll. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I, yeah, my life. It's not necessary. It's all about music. It's about my family.
Wow, that
Um,
rocks, man.
and yeah, and to me, that's what helps me to get up on stage and do what I feel that I learned from my mentors. I'm not turning my back on my mentors. What they share with me, I'm bringing that on stage with me. Another great mentor of mine was Ronnie James Dio. I was his last bass player in the band Dio. I played with him from 2004 until he passed away. And you talk about by the time that I played with Ronnie in 2004, I thought I had, okay, I've been doing this for like 25 years, so I've seen everything. No, no, it was a new layer of musical integrity and experience that he shared with me, and devotion to music and love for what he did, and the band. I mean, he's got to be the most highly respected musician I've ever played with. As he was a band leader, and that's what those are my references. And unfortunately for other people, they don't have those references because I got those references by experience. And I decided, you know what, I'm gonna embrace these references that they're blessings to be able to have played with these magnificent musicians, not just as for their musical contributions, but also for their humanity. And it's this is like, look at this. I am one of the very few who actually got to play with this and this and this and this and this musician, be in this band, experience all of this. So I would be, you know, I cannot even think of myself turning my back on what I have experienced. It really, it's a total blessing. It's so many of them held my hand through my journey, and then they let go because it's time for me to experience a new in my journey, a new experience.
Wow, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing, Rudy. Something that you've kind of touched on a couple of times that I want to expand on if we can. Um, so I'm a pharmacist. This is the Pharmacy Rockstar Podcast, and I started this podcast to provide information from people with experience in their particular industries, their particular uh, skill set, and so being that and most of the audience is pharmacy owners, pharmacists, people in the pharmacy industry. So when you talk about pharmacy, you think about medicine, you think about drugs. So so you being the rocker that you are, let's kind of talk about the elephant in the room of drugs, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing. How prevalent were drugs, both legal and illegal drugs, back in the 80s and, the 90s, and heavy metal. What was your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, we got so much to talk about, so I'm going to encapsulate on a lot of things. I grew up in Miami, which was in the 70s the gateway to the cocaine, the cartels that they had at the time. I knew at a very early age that I was not going to go that route at all. That was going to get in the way of me achieving what I mean, my vision, all I wanted to do was be a professional recording and touring musician to make a living. It wasn't like my aspiration is to play with Ozzy Osbourne and, Quiet Riot being, the first debut, the first band to have a debut album metal to go to number one, or play with Whitesnake, play with any of these English musicians, that was not part of my vision. My vision was very clear. I wanted to be a professional musician. And I knew that lifestyle that my other bandmates, when I was playing clubs in Miami, they just, they would tell me, hey, why are you going to leave here? You can play in the clubs, we got all the drugs and alcohol because at that time that was that was the template for a rock star, to have drugs, alcohol, women, fast cars, whatever. You don't have to like go out, leave Miami and become a starving musician, which is what I became, in order to reach this. You already can do it here. And I said, no, that's not me. That's not what I want to accomplish. I want to be a recording artist, touring artist. I don't want to be playing top 40 disco for the rest of my life, and which the ones that I know that stay behind, that's what happened. So anyway, so I just kept going, and I was very clean, very very clean, up until when let's say when I joined Ozzy, and and this is one of the things that I put no blame on anybody, because again, it was my decision, but uh, what happened is, and this is one thing that sneaks up on you, is let's say I'm touring with Ozzy, and there were certain milestones that we were reaching. So certain awards were given and certain celebrations. And then all of a sudden, to celebrate, you're doing things that had nothing to do with the success that you were experiencing at the time. I did not go on stage drunk. I did not go on stage doing drugs, but now you're reaching certain milestones, and you're celebrating, and you're being offered this stuff, and I'm going like, well, no. But then again, I gotta get a taste of it so they can trust me, you know. And again, it was my choice, but then again, Sharon kept a very very clean backstage, a very clean bus. But then again, it was Ozzy's drive to reconnect with what his lifestyle in Black Sabbath. Sharon saved his life from keeping him into going deeply into following the same behavior lifestyle that he had in Black Sabbath. So there were a lot of, every day was an intervention for Ozzy on that tour bus, on the road, backstage. We stayed at the same hotels. Let's keep Ozzy clean. You know, he's clean now, thank God. Uh, but that was his journey, and I was a part of his journey. And then, I went to another band, became really very successful, Quiet Riot, and it's the same. Getting to the top with any band, getting to the mountain, it's the same landscape that you start going like, okay, up the mountain, okay, oh, I see these trees, they're here. It's the landscape. Then you get to the top, and it's like there's only it's a peak, so there's only room for one at the top. Everybody else is trying to knock you down, so you got to like remain strong. And that's what happens sometimes, with new bands, that they get to the top. And with me, I already have been to the top with Ozzy, but then there's a new peak with Quiet Riot, being having a number one record. And I knew that you have to buckle down. You got to get your belt, you got to get your ropes, and really keep from sliding all the way down. And the same thing happened. Well, by Whitesnake, everybody was mature, everybody was settled in their careers. From David, of course, having been doing that since Deep Purple, and of course Tommy Aldridge, who I played with him in Ozzy, and Adrian Vandenberg and Vivian Campbell. That's the '87 version of the band. Very very stable, very very settled. No issues with drugs or alcohol or anything in it.
Wow. As I'm listening to your story there about Ozzy, yeah, it's no secret. Ozzy's had some substance, issues over the years, and when I think about that, I think of, I mean, some of the great musicians that we've lost due to drug overdoses. You think of people like, oh gosh, I mean, Prince. You think of Prince, and you think of, I think Chris Cornell. Chris Cornell, I think, overdosed. I mean, you've had, Whitney Houston. I mean, you can go on and on and on. And and a lot of these drugs, Rudy, um, I've dispensed a lot of these drugs in the pharmacy as a pharmacist. As a pharmacist, a lot of these drugs like the Xanaxes and the hydrocodones and all these things, that are used out there. And I've seen situations where someone famous, a famous musician, like I've seen famous musicians come into my pharmacy and they're getting their prescription, a legitimate prescription from a doctor, and it's presented to the pharmacist. And the pharmacist is kind of like, you got to make a judgment call, I mean, if you look at, if someone is kind of potentially abusing their drugs, that's a call that pharmacists have to make on a daily basis. And whenever you couple that with someone, a famous celebrity, you get kind of starstruck and you kind of get put in an uncomfortable situation. Um, what would you say to someone like that? If I mean, because I've seen it. Like I've worked in a pharmacy where lots of famous people would come in, and you're starstruck. You're like, wow, I just saw this guy. I'm like, this guy's in one of my favorite bands, and you're like, holy cow. And then you see another guy, famous golfer. You say someone from a famous football team, what have you, and not to say that those guys were doing anything wrong, but I've seen situations, from other colleagues where they get kind of put in a tough spot, whenever a celebrity is kind of using their influence to get a professional like a pharmacist to maybe give them something that maybe they possibly maybe shouldn't. What can you say about that?
Well, I am a member of AA, so I've been sober for 26 years, and it wasn't until recently that I, started going to AA program. And there's a such thing as an enabler, you know. Uh, I think it's up to the individual to either choose. Am I going to be an enabler to this celebrity, or am I going to be, or is this person at some point in their lives going to appreciate the fact that I did not become an enabler and help them on the road to recovery by not helping him to abuse their addiction.
Wow, that rocks. That rocks right there. I've never thought about it that way, but being an enabler, because that's something that me and my colleagues, we talk about that. We go to conventions, go to functions, and they'll say, hey, so and so came in my pharmacy, and he or she, they've got some questionable prescriptions. And as the professional, it puts you in a tough spot because you're like, what do you do? And then you got your boss breathing down your neck saying, hey, you can't turn this person away. This person, I mean, it puts you in between a rock and a hard place as a pharmacist, as a healthcare professional. But the way you just describe that, hey, basically say don't be an enabler. Hey, that's something that I can share with my colleagues, and that totally rocks right there. So thank you for sharing that. I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah, because that is a very narrow, a road that at some point there's going to be a fork on the road that the individual who's seeking to feed their addiction has to make a decision of like, am I going to recovery, or am I going to go into this very short path that's going to end my life? Because you're not going to survive that, and that type of lifestyle it has a very short lifespan, and if the person decides to go to recovery, they're going to really appreciate the that the individual that he was trying to gain their sympathy to enable them to get to feed their addiction, that person refused only for to keep them from killing themselves.
You mentioned you have a book out. So yeah, so tell my audience about your book. Where can they get it? Yeah, what's the name of your book again? And yeah, how can my audience contact you? Where can they follow you on social media?
My social media is just Rudy Sarzo, and I have my little dog always on my photo. And yeah, just take a look at it because there's some fake pages, but I'm the one with a gazillion followers. So if you see a fake page that with like maybe 100 followers, that's not me, because I've been doing this for a long time. So I've been accumulating followers. Yeah. And my book is called, the title is Off the Rails. You can get it on Amazon.com. You can download it as Kindle or print copy. And it's $12.95. I know because there's some people, they'll find some like really expensive, somebody selling it on eBay and says, no, you can pick it up for $12.95, brand new on Amazon. And the book is about the number one question I get asked when I travel around the world, which is, what was it like to play with Randy Rhoads? So it's a book dedicated to him. It's every question you ever have about that you would ask me about Randy Rhoads. All the answers are in that book.
Wow, that's great. That's awesome. That totally rocks. I just just listening to you talk about Randy. I mean, Randy was just it sounds like he was just a very knowledgeable young man. And you got to ride along with him, up until the end, and you were able to absorb a bunch of amazing knowledge and experience from that young man, because he was what, 23 years old whenever he died?
Oh, no,
something like that.
26.
26. Okay, I knew he was young. I knew he was very young when he died in a plane crash, right? Yeah. So
I think you having the podcast, so we can come on and maybe fill in some questions that the listener or people watching the podcast might have about what you do and what I do. To me, it's all about passing information. And we are the first generation that can actually do it in a way that we can archive it electronically. And 100 years from now, people can still watch us. And it's all relative. I think people are going to need that sort of input, information that we're sharing right now. It will still be relevant 100 years from now.
Right. Exactly. Well, Rudy, thank you once again for joining me on the Pharmacy Rockstar Podcast. Look, I would love to have you back. So,
I love to come back.
So thank you
we
for
got
offering.
so much more to talk about. We got
Absolutely, we sure do.
I wanted to share, how with supplements and vitamins, how
Yes,
it allows me to perform at at the level that I do at 73. Yeah.
Right, and no, absolutely, and we can talk about that. Yeah, we'll get deep into that. But man, I this is my fault. I'm a fan, and I just got sucked into your Randy Rhoads stories and just all your rock knowledge. I mean, your Aussie, man. I'm sorry. So my audience, I'm sorry if I let you down, but I'm a fan. I'm a fan of this guy first, but I love talking rock and roll, and that's, yes, sir. You heard it here, folks. Rudy's going to be back. Yeah, Rudy. So thanks again. And look, and I will see you. at Lava Cantina in the Colony here in a few weeks.
Send me an email with it, and I'll put you on the guest list.
Oh, awesome, man. Oh, that rocks. Oh, thank you so much. That totally rocks, Rudy. Thank you.
I want to see you.
Yes, sir. I'll be there.
Hang out.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Great. Yes, sir. I will be there, my friend.
Okay, doctor. Thank you so much. I'll see you.
Yes, sir, Rudy. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay. God bless you.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you. Rock on. Let's go.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Wow, that is so awesome. Did you guys just see that? Rudy just asked me to email him, letting him know when I'm going to be there. And he's going to put me on his guest list for his show this month. That is so freaking awesome. Folks, man, this is so awesome. That's it for us today on the Pharmacy Rockstar Podcast. Make sure you pick up Rudy's book and make sure you follow him on his social media platforms. Make sure you follow our podcast, the Pharmacy Rockstar Podcast. You can follow us on all platforms so you can get the latest updates from all the rock stars we're going to bring on every month. Let's go. Rock on.